So if you're looking to buy a new SSD for your system, most of the time it just makes more sense to spend your money on an SSD that offers a lot of value instead of a super fast one. And this is exactly what this Western Digital Blue SN570 has to offer. So this is a refresh of the SN550 that has been one of the most popular SSDs in the last year or two because of its low price. But they are promising that this new model should be faster than its predecessor in pretty much every possible way, and it should cost you about 95 euros or dollars for 1 terabyte. And keep in mind, this is the launch price. I do expect it to drop even more in the coming weeks. However, cheaper SSDs almost always have limitations and certain weaknesses, and there are things that you need to know and need to think about before buying one for yourself, and this drive is no exception. So let's see how it performs, how it compares to some other drives on the market, and if it's worth getting it at all. Let's begin. This video is brought to you by Seasonic and their Prime Series power supplies. These top quality power supplies are very efficient, they're whisper quiet, extremely reliable, and my go-to choice for most of my test rigs and builds around here. And to make the deal even sweeter, Seasonic wraps it all up in a cozy 12-year-long warranty. Check them out using the links in the description below. So this SN570 is a very typical 80mm M.2 NVMe drive. It is PCIe Gen 3, not Gen 4, which does make a lot of sense when you're looking at that good value category. But it is a 3-bit or a TLC SSD, and that is a very important detail. So a lot of other cheap SSDs save money by storing 4 bits of data in every memory cell instead of 3, and that has negative effects on performance as well as the lifespan of the drive. So I'm really happy that Western Digital isn't doing that, and I'm really happy that you get a 5-year warranty with this drive, which you probably will not need, but it's nice to see your purchase protected for a reasonable amount of time. But they are clearly saving money on the PCB design, which is extremely basic. You can see the controller and a single flash chip, and that's pretty much it. There is no DRAM cache, which you would usually find in mid-range and high-end SSDs. And I would say absolutely no effort went into the design, which can be something to think about if it's going to be visible in your system. Now, I do think it's a shame that they are only offering this SSD in 250 gigs, 500 gigs, and 1 terabyte capacities. I have the 1 terabyte drive right here, and as you can see, there is plenty of space left on the PCB to make a 2 terabyte or even a much larger version. With SSD prices dropping consistently over the years and the games getting larger and larger, 2 terabyte SSDs are becoming more popular, and I do believe that a 2 terabyte version of this would be very interesting to see. But let's talk performance. So I'm going to start with the PCMark 10 benchmarks, which are pretty balanced and can easily explain specific and very clear use cases, even to people that are not into SSDs. And the PCMark 10 quick test replicates all the little things that we do with our systems that are not that heavy on the SSD. Things like working with documents, photos, or even playing games. So I would say it's a great test if you're looking to add a second SSD to your system for those simple tasks. And the SN570 does excellent here. With a score of 341 megabytes per second, it's a bit faster than the older SN550, significantly faster than the Kingston A2000, which usually costs about the same, and it is also a lot faster than the fastest SATA drives on the market, like the Samsung 870 EVO. It's not even far off higher-end NVMe's like the Kingston KC2500 or even some Gen 4 SSDs. Now, Samsung 980 does do better here, but it is also way more expensive. Now, full PCMark 10 suite, which is a much more intense test that is meant to replicate more serious active use of your system and the drive, is usually a good metric to look at if you plan to use this as your primary SSD. And again, the SN570 does really well here. It's still a bit ahead of the Kingston A2000 as well as the older SN550, and far ahead of SATA drives that cost the same or even a bit more nowadays. But the Samsung 980 is still ahead, but what's important here is that Western Digital's controller can handle those regular everyday tasks well, and it's even challenging some Gen 4 drives in that regard. Now, even in the PCMark 10 consistency test, which is a very extreme multi-hour long stress test, this SSD seems to hold up really well. Now, the Samsung 980 performance completely tanks here when stressed for so long, while the SN570 is outperforming the older SN550 by a factor 2. So it looks like that this SSD could even be great for those high-end workstations that you stress all day. But it actually isn't. So first of all, compliments to Western Digital. Their new controller seems to handle most tasks you throw at it very well. So if we grab Atto Benchmark, for example, it looks like it will handle all sort of blocks of data easily with speeds that are around what they advertise. So around 3000 megabytes per second write or 3500 megabytes per second read. And that is what PCMark 10 shows as well, as that is actually what most PC tasks do to your SSD. However, there is a very clear exception here, and that is when you start transferring large amounts of data to this drive. So after copying about 15 gigabytes of data non-stop, write performance slows down significantly to around 550 to 600 megabytes per second, and that is not happening because of overheating and throttling, as you will see in a second, but because it just gets bottlenecked with all the large amounts of data that are being thrown at it without any breaks. So looking at Atto benchmarks again, this time with 32 gigabytes of 2 megabyte blocks of data, we end up with an end result of 582 megabytes per second, which is way less than the 1500 from the original SN550 and nowhere near the roughly 3000 that you would expect most Gen 3 SSDs to offer. Now on the FLIR camera, we can see the controller doesn't even reach 60 degrees, which is really very little for components like this. And this is without airflow. So the bad news is that adding a heatsink won't help performance, but the good news is that you don't really need a heatsink, so it will be a very good drive for laptops as well. While Western Digital isn't technically guilty of false advertising because the drive can write around 3000 megabytes per second as they claim, keep in mind that it can do that only for a couple of seconds before dropping down to basically SATA write speeds. And you need to kind of ask yourself how much that matters to you. If you're a video editor, for example, that copies large amounts of data all the time, this is not a drive for you, and you probably shouldn't be looking at budget drives anyways. But if you're looking for a secondary SSD to park some extra files on or to install your games on, this is still an excellent option. It is faster than SATA SSDs that usually cost the same or even a bit more, and it's even faster than most Gen 3 SSDs as long as you're mostly sticking to those lighter tasks or read-intensive tasks instead of the write-intensive ones. But if you're looking for a new primary or OS drive, it might be a little bit more complicated. So this SN570 will be a better option than any QLC NVMe or SATA drive, but I would still personally recommend paying a bit more for a slightly higher end drive that has DRAM cache, like the Kingston KC2500, for example. If you still don't want to pay more for your storage and you don't expect to write large amounts of data to your SSD regularly, this is still an upgrade over the older SN550 and a very good value buy. Now that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe to Techtesters to never miss an upload. Bye guys, and see you in the next one.